So let's talk about a really important thing in our ministry, and that is the safety of children and vulnerable people. So the three areas that we want to briefly visit today, who is vulnerable, and how we can be prepared as leaders, and how we can prepare our spaces to facilitate and welcome all people. So firstly, who is vulnerable? So I was supposed to jump to the point. You could say that any particular person at any particular given time could be vulnerable. So let's crack this open and think about this a bit more. But I suppose mental health and all those sorts of things, they can waver and change. And so sometimes it's what could make someone a vulnerable person is circumstantial. So that you can have a joyful, happy, enthusiastic young person in your ministry context. They might go through a particular family tragedy, or something's going on that might start to happen in their life, where now at this particular given moment they're more vulnerable. They're more vulnerable to receiving different impressions, more vulnerable to taking things to heart a bit more than they might normally. And so this is where we have to be quite conscious all the time of all those that we serve, because at any given moment we might just be confronted with times where we are journeying with someone who's in a bit more of a vulnerable state. So that's I suppose a very generic way to open it up, but let's get some more clear answers on the board. So definitely people who are young and impressionable are more vulnerable. We have the suffering and the grieving, those who might be struggling with identity in whatever form that looks like, those with disabilities, and even, I suppose, when we host initiatives that are meant for a particular group. Let's say it's like a boys' night or a girls' night, and so therefore we have to think about the rest of our community, and could this be affecting someone, and how do we actually confront that together? How do we talk about that together? So the second area is to be prepared as leaders. So it's good to establish clear expectations and boundaries for our youth leaders, and we can refer to our child code of conducts for all that sort of information. And so another important area with all leaders, including volunteers, is to make sure they have the necessary working with vulnerable people background checks. And so that might be state by state, but depending on your context, we can talk about that together. So make sure the youth ministry is adequately staffed, and those present are qualified. So that's things like making sure that 2 people over the age of 18 are always present when around minors, and we might have a particular head to leader, like number of children to leadership ratio. Another thing for leaders is to keep in constant dialogue, communicate with each other about your ministry experiences, have debriefs after your experiences, encourage open communication, and provide opportunities for feedback. So you might be in a situation where you've had a youth group, everything seemed fine, and then by the end of it, you get together as a team, and someone might say, I just noticed that such and such was a little bit off this afternoon. Can we talk about it? And then in previous, in following gatherings, that might be something just to keep an eye on. So communication is more than often a preventative action. So we never want our young people to be in harmful or dangerous situations or get to a point where they are. So communicating and being on top of all these sorts of things as they go is a really wonderful way to work as a team. Stay up to date with current trends and safety guidelines for youth programs, and as an archdiocese, we'll keep you informed of when these new updates come. And then it's also good to be transparent. So develop and maintain a strong communication with youth and their families. So open channels of communication between youth and their parents and the youth ministry leaders, which so together we can help ensure that everyone is on the same page about expectations and safety. We have things whenever we do things like have small group conversations, or we gather for the first time, or when it's the first time a child turns up, we can present what the safety protocols are. We can say, hey, look, we have a form where these are just the areas that we'd love for your parents to consent to before proceeding on to participate in this youth group or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways that we can communicate with parents and children to make sure and communicate with them that they are adequately protected. A third area of working with our young people and keeping them safe and working with the vulnerable as well is having prepared spaces. So does the space perform what it ought to? So is the physical environment safe? So what we can do is we can conduct routine checks. We can check things like whether the ramps are slippery or whether the doors are having problems with the locks or whatever, that sort of thing. So we can do routine checks with the physical space. Another area is to think of the atmosphere. Is this space that the young people are entering into, is it welcoming? Is it relevant? Is it engaging? Are the people who are leading welcoming? Is there opportunities for different people to go and perhaps spend some time in the corner with a particular set of games or something like that, where they can, maybe some people are take a little bit longer to come out of their shell, and so they might need some things to just distract them for a little while. There's a lot of different things that, depending on the age and context that you're working with, to consider when working with this. So, and then a third area is to make sure that you're offering age-appropriate activities and that the resources are relevant to each context that you're working with. Look, we could talk about child and vulnerable people protection like till the cows come home. It's an important area, and it's always important that we communicate these things. But the whole reason for establishing such wonderful protocols is so that everyone can always have the most wonderful experience, because when we do everything naturally possible, it can also open up a lot of opportunity for God to impact their hearts. Because when young people and vulnerable people know that we're looking out for them and we want the best for them, that comes from an area of love, and Christ teaches us to love. And so let it be encouraging to you that every step of working with our young people who may be vulnerable or not, let it be encouraging to you that we're always doing everything we can to make sure that their interest is at heart.